Guys, what's going on? Here is a brand new episode of Entertain the Geeky, brought to you by yours truly, the Chris. So I'm here, you're here. Let's hang out and talk about LitRPG. Now, what is LitRPG? It is a literary role-playing game. Now, you are not playing a game. You're listening to somebody like us get sucked into a game and having to deal with all the ramifications associated with the world that game presents. And it's a crazy thing because we take so much for granted. Like safety, not having to kill people, all kinds of like basic stuff as far as we're concerned. But then these characters are cast into these worlds where the characters just like us, like they live with the safety net that all of us live with, and they have to go into this world where there's, they're having to kill and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Some of them love it and get really into it. Some of them are like, I don't like killing shit because it's, not cool. My values don't align with that. So it's something that they struggle with. And that's typically, it's like a point of contention with these characters because of how they were brought up in our world and not this other world where death was just a normal thing. You run around killing shit in those worlds. So really, really cool. But, so I'm going to talk about how I got introduced to LitRPG, the books that I've gone through and what I've enjoyed about them. And then I will, I'm going to fucking totally recommend them to you guys. So it was a little over a year ago, I started a D&D group for my kids, my childhood best friend, and my brothers. One of my brothers had to drop out before we started playing because he had other obligations. No big deal. My the other brother that was playing, he was like, I'll just have my girlfriend start playing. She couldn't play consistently, so our group dwindled down pretty quickly. I managed to get them through, I wanted to take them through a, save the princess, get the gold kind of scenario. And I managed to get them through that. And at the end of it, my brother was like, hey, I'm going to drop out. I got to do some real life. No big deal. Get it. And I asked my kids and my buddy John, I was like, hey, do you guys want to keep going? And they were like, hell yeah. And John, all the meanwhile, while we're playing and whatnot, he's like, dude, you need to do some LitRPG. Like, you'll love it. It's this. Like, it's the banter that we have, but in a story form. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, but, it's such a time investment. I've got TV shows that I want to watch. I want a dad. I got to work. Like, all this normal people shit. Well, finally, he strong arms me. And he's like, hey, what's your email? And I'm like, oh, and I tell him my email. And he goes, oh, okay, cool. I just bought you your first LitRPG book. It's Dungeon Crawler Carl. You are going to listen to it because I paid money for it. And I was like, fuck, man. You bastard. Fine. So I start listening to Dungeon Crawler Carl. And it was I started it when I was... Basically, when I had downtime. The beautiful thing about a podcast or an audiobook, though, is, you can do other stuff and still consume it. It's wild, man. The thing that's hardest about it is, not getting hooked on whatever it is you're listening to. So, I start listening to it during a little bit of downtime, and it turns into this thing where I'm like, fuck, I gotta listen to this. I'm getting hooked. I'm in it. And I'm like, I have to listen to this while I'm doing the mundane shit at work while I'm waiting on a customer to show up because I was still selling cars at the time. So I'm sitting there waiting on a customer, just waiting. Like, where are they at? Come on. But I didn't want them to show up. And then when they would show up, I'm like, fuck, I got to pause this book. I don't want to. Boop. You pause it. I do the customer interaction, and then I'd be like, thank God this is over. That's how I make money. Time to get back to the book. So I'd get back to my book, and I just crushed the first book. And it's a 16-hour book, which is, that's a lot of fucking hours. So I managed to find 16 hours over the course of right around a week to, stuff that into my ears and make it part of my brain. So I do that. And then I'm like, oh, there's more. He's like, yeah, dude, there's 4 books out right now. Kick ass. So I get the next book in the series. And I fly through it. I don't even remember how long it took me to get through that one. Probably only a couple of days. I went through that second book extremely fast. Then the third book, same thing. And then the 4th book, well, I got COVID. And it just so happened that this is right around Christmas time. So people are like getting together with family and whatnot. Me and my family are, quarantined during all of this. So it's like, all right, well, I've got nothing better to do than listen to Dungeon Crawler Carl and bake cookies. So we do that whole thing. We bake Christmas cookies, and I'm just listening. And I finish it. And then the worst thing happens. There's not another fucking book. Okay? I purchased the readable copy, but I'm like, man, I'm not doing that. The voice acting in this is so good. And, now I can kind of climb into that a little bit. So, Dungeon Crawler Carl is a story by Matt Denneman, and it is produced by Soundbooth Studios. And Soundbooth Studios is made up of Jeff Hayes, who's freaking brilliant. And they do the most incredible thing together. The only thing that I can liken it to is your favorite band writing your favorite song. It's that good. Like, it's one of those things where all of the stars have aligned, and the blip on the radar that is us happened to be at the time where these 2 dudes got to do this series together. It's perfect. I love it. And I finish it, and I'm like, no, nothing in sight for months. So months go by, and I listen to, if I'm listening to an audiobook, it's like a boring, the self-help kind of thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do grown-up stuff too. So I take some of that shit in. Well, then July comes around, and the new fucking Dungeon Crawler Carl comes out, and it's 24 hours or 25 hours. It's stupid long. So I start it. I'm out of the card business at this point. I'm working from home, so I can listen to it during like my entire workday, except for when I'm doing like certain crucial things. So I'm just, boom, killing it. And we're going to the pool. I'm listening to it there. This fucking 25-hour book only took me right around a week to get through. Not even a few days. And like, we're going to the pool. I'm listening to it while we're at the pool. And then one night I woke up in the middle of the night and just couldn't get back to sleep. And I was like, well, Dungeon Crawler Carl's there, and I've only got a couple hours left in the story. So it's like, 4 or 5 in the morning. I pop my earbud in, and I press play. And the story, that book 5 wraps up, and I'm like in tears. It was freaking brilliant, lovely, absolutely adored it. And I'm telling John, I'm like, man, that was so fucking good. And he's like, yeah, you need to give these other books a chance. And I'm like, yeah, no time. He's like, yeah, I've heard all that bullshit before. He's like, this book and this book are free right now. He's like, just download them and give them a listen. I download them, never listen to them. And finally, he's like, dude, just do He Who Fights with Monsters. Like, there's 8 fucking books. He's like, if you fall in love with it, there's plenty of shit there for you to listen to and not have to worry about getting, not having anything to do, not having anything to listen to. So I'm like, all right, man, I'll fucking do He Who Fights with Monsters. I get book 1. Slightly different flavor than Dungeon Crawler Carl. I would call it a little more crunchy. It's like the difference between D&D 5e and Pathfinder. Like, very, very similar, same DNA, but not necessarily the same animal. And it makes it, it made it refreshing in that regard, because there's stats that are being read off all the time and shit like that. And I'm digging it, man. Digging it. So I'm on the 5th book right now. But I start that one, and again, working from home, powers through the fucking first book, like power through it. That one did take me about a week because it was a 24-hour book. So it took me right around a week, and then book 2, couple of days, like during my work week, I'm just jamming that. After work, while I'm cooking dinner, jamming that, I say jamming it like I'm listening to a song, but it's like that, man. So I get, I'm going through it, loving it. Get to 4th book, which is good, ends good. 5th book, boom. Jeez, man. Like, I don't know how these dudes have turned out so much content in such a short period of time. And that's one of the things that I will say about these LitRPG authors. They are machines, man. Shirtaloo is the guy that does He Who Fights with Monsters. Every one of these books is like a 24-hour book, 20-hour book. They're fucking crazy long. Somehow, this dude is managing to put out like several in a year. I can't write a book over the course of a lifetime, let alone make 3 fucking Bible-sized books in a year or anything insane like that. Like, it might even be more than that. And it's the same thing for Matt Dinniman. Matt Dinniman, the guy that does Dungeon Crawler Carl, is also doing like Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon. He's doing a bunch of shit, and it's all really good, really fun. I guess I did do Battlefield Surgeon. Get into that later. Doesn't matter. But yeah, so they pump out just this incredible amount of stuff for us, the listeners, to consume, and it's insane. Like, I don't know how they do it. They must like have this crazy level of discipline where they're like, all right, I'm gonna sit down for 4 hours today and do nothing but write, and then tomorrow I'm gonna sit down for 14 hours and do nothing but write. It has to be something like that in order to turn out this much, because it is so fucking much. And with how well thought out a lot of it is, it's like, Jesus, dude, did you like, clearly they have an overarching story that they're trying to tell, so they have like bullet points and whatnot, but getting through all of that is just, it's an ungodly amount of stuff, and my hat's off to them is really what I'm trying to say with this. How much they can do in such a short period of time is completely incredible. So, yeah, I highly fucking recommend getting into the LitRPG thing. Not that I could justify reading it with my eyeballs. I gotta listen to it, You're out of commission if you're doing something with your eyes. That's what it's like watching TV. You're out of commission. You're not doing other shit. You're just watching TV. When you're reading a book, you're not really doing other shit. You're just reading the book. You might be able to do like some kind of little thing, fold laundry or something like that, but you can't do anything that's major. You might be able to eat while you're doing it, but you can't really interact with people while you're doing it because of how the medium, because of what the medium requires from you on a sensory level. These aren't like that, man. These audiobooks aren't like that, man. You can just sit there and go. I love it. I can't say enough good about that. It's like podcasting, You can sit down and be working and listening to this and getting shit done, but you're also like being entertained at the same time. So it's pretty rad. Just fucking download a LitRPG. Go to Audible. Get fucking Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's worth every ounce of time that you'll put into it. It is worth. You'll love it. There's 5 books. I can't recommend it enough. Same thing with He Who Fights with Monsters. It's just yeah, it's so fucking good, man. And it was funny. When I was telling my buddy, I was like, hey, I started this one. And he's like, man, I almost feel bad that I introduced you to Dungeon Crawler Carl first because of how just over the top good it is. And I was like, no, I can appreciate that. And I wouldn't be so sucked into it if I did not have that initial hit, man. That was like the The First High was that dungeon crawler Carl. Super rad, man. I mean, that's what I have to say about LitRPG. There's nobody to riff off of here, so it's not like I can have that conversation. If you guys listen to LitRPG or read LitRPG, what do you recommend? There's a bunch of cool shit out there. What are your go-tos? Like, are you a He Who Fights with Monsters guy? Are you a Dungeon Crawler Carl guy? Or do you have like another series that you're invested in that you love? A lot of folks. So I'm in a couple of groups for these now, because you can't just listen to them. You got to be in a club for it. So I'm in a couple of groups for these now, and the amount of fucking LitRPG books that a lot of these dudes can fucking listen to blows my mind. They're like, oh yeah, I've gone through like 14 series. It's like 900 hours. I'm like, dude, how did you find that many hours? I didn't even know there were that many hours in my life. You found them all just over the course of like 6 months to go through all these books, or a few years. I guess the genre came into being in like 2013, or the phrase was coined anyway. But yeah, cannot get enough LitRPG. And it's funny, it makes me think of just regular high fantasy. And you will get, like, in regular high fantasy, they'll give you some references to some popular shit. But if you're looking at something like Tolkien, like, we're so out of touch with that because of how long ago it was. We might not necessarily grasp it, and there's no reason to really use those references, because you're using, you're telling your story. You're using every word to not tip your hat to somebody else, but to get your story out. I think that's super interesting, man. Anywho, if you've got recommendations, comment, let me know what they are. You can email them to entertainthegeeky.com or entertainthegeeky@gmail.com. Good Lord, can't even say the email. And I'll be happy to take a peek at them, maybe review them. Just so you guys know, we're trying to get everything up and going again. Entertainthegeeky.com. There is an EG Games tab and a Gear tab. Both of them will get you to Merle's Truck Stop in Maine. If you are a longtime listener, you know what Merle's Truck Stop is. It is the world famous one-page, $1 role-playing game. Help us out. Help ETG out. Pick up a copy of that for yourself. It's everything you need is on one page. It is a blast. I played it for the first time in a couple of years recently. My regular game group, we took a week off because the DM couldn't show up. So instead of actually taking the week off, I was like, oh, I'll run us through Merle's Truck Stop. Fuck, man. It was a blast, and it was so refreshing going from D&D 5e to that, at least for a night. And it's the perfect season for it right now. Halloween is right around the corner, and it makes for a real fun one-time horror story. You can bust it out for your regular game group, or run it just for people that are new to role-playing, because that is a good starter. All you need is some D6s. So yeah, check out Merle's Truck Stop. Pick up a copy. That'll help us out. And as always, stay geeky.